That's exactly how I felt as a child, but I couldn't tell anyone because we're not allowed to talk about not being loved in our culture. We're made to feel that everybody knows love. I mean, I talk in the book about all of these people who'll say, you know, my dad beat me or mom did this, but she really loved me. And a key chapter in the book is the chapter on children, where I'm saying that no, in fact, if we are being abused in any way, we are not being loved. That love is antithetical to abuse and to domination. And that marvelous moment for me in the book when I'm talking about what do we teach our children about love? What is the miseducation we give them? And part of the miseducation we give them is that you can violate someone and then say you love them. And I think as we ponder why we are raising a nation of violent children, we have to ponder that miseducation about the nature of love.
That was Bell Hooks. Born Gloria Jean Watkins, September 25th, 1952 in Hopkinsville, a small town in Kentucky. She passed away last week, and Drew McCaskill, who will be joining us later, did a beautiful tribute. She passed away December 15th. But today I wanted to talk to some people who knew her. First, let me welcome back to the show one of my buddies. She is executive editor over at Amistad Books, a division of HarperCollins. Actually, I met Bell Hooks with her one evening in the Village. I remember it like it was yesterday, because this woman with this Butterfly McQueen-esque voice and all this exuberance and power dynamic personality. But I didn't know who she was. I was not introduced, and Tracy Sherrod introduced me to her. Let me welcome Tracy Sherrod to the show. Hi, welcome.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for bringing reinforcements. Thank you for bringing her sister, Bell Hooks' sister, to talk about her, the impact of what Bell Hooks meant to us and what she means to us. Let me welcome to the show Valeria Watkins. Welcome to the Karen Hunter Show. Hi.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm going to start with you, Ms. Watkins. You know, when you listen to that clip of, and I pulled that because so many of us, especially Black people, we have been taught that tough love is love, that, you know, violence is love, that I'm beating you here so that they don't beat you out there. The detachment and all of the things that we have been forced to accept as human beings, when we all kind of need the same things. But as Black people, we have been able to make chitlins out of everything. You know, we make do. When you hear your sister talk about that, and I thought it was so profound, share your experience growing up in that same household.
I had a very similar experience. It is somewhat difficult to describe how open in many respects our family were, yet very much a part of the old school. And it was how people saw you, not so much what was going on in the home. And I think what my sister is speaking to is that we've got to get beyond what we've learned to survive from the past, but to begin to look at a different way of loving and holding those ones that are our beloved ones.
I was reading from her autobiography, something about, you know, girls shouldn't learn too much. And you have a doctorate, you know, Bell Hooks, of course, was well-learned, you know, well-read. Somehow y'all decided to go and do it anyway, to go fill your minds. What was that conundrum, or was there a conflict in pursuing all of this academic achievement and knowledge in spite of it, you know, hampering your ability to be a wife and a mother and all of these things?
Well, it was very interesting. Our mother desperately wanted us to be educated. It was something that had not happened in her life, even though she had wanted that growing up. So we were all encouraged to pursue the academic aspect of life while also holding those rigid kind of marriage, children, stay home. So you had to decide for yourself that direction that you were going to hold. But I think that whatever direction each one of us chose, we were accepted and it was respected. My parents knew that my sister was a genius. Just the way she read prolifically since she was a little child. And she maintained that throughout her life. I was always amazed at the dearth of her knowledge, while also staying on top of everything that's been written. It wasn't just one genre that she focused on. She was open to everything and learning from everyone. And then taking that information and making it her own. And I was always impressed when I traveled with her because we traveled a lot together. And I would be amazed at her taking a concept or an idea that I thought I was comfortable with, and she would just take it and expand on ideas I hadn't even thought of, possibilities I hadn't thought of. And she was so quick, and I would just be sitting there thinking, wow, where did she come up with that?
Dr. Valeria, I just wanted to reintroduce you. Dr. Valeria Watkins, PhD in transpersonal psychology, also
Yes.
sister of Bell Hooks. You can follow her at Dr_Valeria. That's, I mentioned Tracy Sherrod introduced me to her one, it was a summer. It was in the 90s. I remember, I think you were shopping for something, Tracy. I don't know if it was a gag gift or something, and Bell Hooks met you. And I was like, okay, all right. She's fun. Tell me about your friend, because you guys were friends.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun together. We worked on 4 books together while I was at Henry Holt. And we saw each other probably 2 or 3 times a week, for years. I would go over to her house on Charles Street, which was so gorgeous and beautiful, beautifully decorated, and just a place where I felt like you could really think. And she was amazing. Like she wanted all her covers to be red or have some red in it. She felt like you could see those from across the room. And so we did lots of that. And I just learned a lot from her every day, all the time. And she read a book a day was her thing. Yes.
Wait, Dr. Valeria said more. She read more.
She read
How?
more than one. Yes.
And so I'd keep her supplied. Great.
You were her dealer? You were her book dealer?
Yes, I was, and her paper dealer.
What was it, just everything, or was it a specific, like I always, I feel like there are people that get stuck in genres because that's their capacity. And listening to Dr. Valeria, talk about, Bell taking, one concept and then blowing it out, that's really the challenge of our brain to really, look at everything and not just be stuck in one area. And I feel like we're in a very, I keep bringing up inflection point, but everything's in these little boxes and buckets, and people don't like to see broadly the world. They want to be in their little comfort bubbles and not really explore anything. And I think it's very dangerous where we are right now.
Well, that certainly was not my sister. She did not fit in a box, even though it was hard for her, the way people responded. But it was important to her to be clear, to be distinct, and she knew what she was talking about. People would later come back and apologize because they didn't get the full magnitude of what she was presenting. And I
Dr.
think
Valeria,
as a result of all the reading, she was able to pull from so many sources to make a more comprehensive and complete idea, if you will.
what didn't they get, and what was the painful, what was the hurtful, feedback that she would get? What didn't people get about bell hooks?
Well, people thought she was a loose cannon. So if there was a topic that a group, a panel were speaking of, she wasn't often wanted in the early days because they weren't sure what she would say, if she would stick to the script or to the main theme. She was one of those thinkers that just didn't stay in a box that other people wanted her to be in. So it was hard sometimes when you're on a panel with someone like that. It appears as if they're trying to stand out, but she was trying to give an idea for people to expand and to grow on. And it made it hard for other people. She was so well read, she could flick the names of books that other people hadn't even thought about looking at. And I think that was hard being that progressive when other people weren't.
Tracy Sherrod, Dr. Valeria Watkins, the sister of bell hooks. Little B, little H. I've had to correct so many people because we are conditioned to capitalize people's names, and we that's a sign of respect. You explained this to me years ago. Can you explain to the audience, Tracy, the little B, the little H, why she chose that name, bell hooks?
And Dr. Watkins knows better because it's her grandmother that Belle named herself after.
Okay, I apologize.
And I'll let you take that over. But the lowercase.
Yes, Dr. Watkins, come on, tell us the story.
It's actually our great grandmother, who was known as a woman who spoke her mind. And that was unusual for a Black woman, especially in Kentucky at those times. So my sister wanted to honor that because she also wanted to speak her mind. And she put it in lower caps to emphasize and show respect and to step out of the boundaries that our society tries to place on us, where we all have to fit in. My sister has never fit in. She's always spoken her mind. That was hard for my parents. When you got a little child that can spew French, you're just like, what is going on here? When did she learn this? She just was a prolific reader and writer at a very, very young age. My younger sister tells the story, which we all shared the same room growing up. We lived in a house that had an upstairs. There were 2 rooms. My older 2 sisters, who were half sisters, shared one room, and the other 4 of us shared the other. My sister read all night. There was one light, and we couldn't sleep. And she just wanted to read, not just at night, but all through the day. There would be books in the bed, books by the bed, books everywhere stacked up. And we just couldn't believe how she was just taking it in and processing it, but she did. So that was the beginning. My parents didn't stop that. In fact, we would go to the library in the summer and we would all be able to get books, and she would have 30 or 40. We would have 1 or 2. And she would be done with her books before we got through with ours. That gives you an idea of how her mind worked and how she just put in information.
866-801-8255. Dr. Valeria Watkins, the sister of Bell Hooks, and Tracy Sherrod, one of her friends and editor. Tracy, where were you when you found out that she had passed?
I was here working when it was late at night, when Valerie reached out to me to let me know that that Belle wasn't doing well. And so it was Tuesday night. And I learned that she passed on Wednesday morning. And
what is the law? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think the loss is huge because for as long as Belle wrote, and the fact that she was one of the most prolific Black writers and definitely female writers, that that she was just now, it seemed, really coming into huge and broad popularity and being read and her work translated in a variety of different languages. And all of that was happening in recent years, even though she deserved it all along. I remember when I first, I'm going to say met Belle in quotation marks, was when I read Ain't I a Woman when I was in college. And my mind was blown. I was like, I finally felt seen and heard, and that somebody was looking out for the life of Black women. And then it was years later when her work was submitted to Henry Holt. It was in like 1990s, and it was in the 80s when I read Ain't I a Woman, the early 80s. And so this was about the early 90s when her submission came in. And you would think that it would have been a huge auction, but there wasn't. There wasn't. Today there would be. Belle would be a multimillionaire from selling one book to the next, because that's how important she is. And there are so many people who have supported her through the years with course adoption and the like. And that's what made her work, has added to the popularity of her work. Because, all the ideas that she had, we're still just figuring them out now, how important that they are. And like for her to do a memoir of being a young girl in Bone Black was phenomenal at that time in the 90s. The only other one at that time was like, that was, memoir was like Maya Angelou. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And so, and Belle's, of course, is extremely different and extremely enlightening on so many levels, as was Maya Angelou's. So Belle was just a hugely important writer that I feel like the world has come too late giving her the respect that she deserves, the attention that she deserves, and a real dissection of all the ideas that she presented to us.
If you were to, for people who've never heard of Bell Hooks, which again, in my 20s, hanging out with you that night, I didn't know. And then I grew to realize what a blessing it was, and how humbled and honored, to be in the presence of that greatness, and all of the questions that I would ask now, but I didn't know to ask. And that's, usually the travesty, that you don't have you don't know what you don't know to be able to even extract from somebody like that. But if I were able to come with my fullness that I have now, oh my goodness, the conversations, oh my goodness, the learning. Where should people start, Tracy, in their exploration of Bell Hooks? Where would you lead them? And then what would be the 1, 2, 3 that would lead them down a rabbit hole to really unwind or understand or try to understand what this woman was about?
I think I think it would be fun, like if we did every other one, like I'll do one and then maybe Dr. Watkins will do another and then I'll do one and then
Okay.
another. Because, you know, she wrote a lot and it's really
Yes,
important
she
for
did.
people to embrace that and to embrace the words of what she had to say. I'd like to start with Ain't I a Woman? And I start with that one because the reason why it touched me so much was, yes, there was the white women's feminist movement going on, and they wanted to go to work and be paid equitably and all this kind of stuff. And
And
I
vote.
was like,
And vote. Yeah.
some of us don't even have jobs. What are you talking about? You know, like we have a whole different reality where it wasn't, where work doesn't necessarily affirm Black women. So all of the things that they were talking about in the white feminist movement just did not apply to me as a Black woman. And Belle highlighted the important things that do apply to us. Because, you know, we've been working since we got here. You know, so we definitely weren't fighting to see how much harder we could work. and all of that. So it's so that would be my first choice. And then Valerie?
My first choice is Sisters of the Yam. I love that book. And my sister created, wherever she was, circles of women talking, sharing, and loving each other. And it is part of what my work is in working as a counselor or therapist, is helping women to be able to, especially African-American women, to explore and go deeper within, do that deep dive. It's not just the surface information and stuff that we have to be open to exploring. And that is what I felt she did in Sisters of the Yam. And there's still a group that started at Yale, because she was at Yale when she did Sisters of the Yam and had students participate. And they've written and they've talked about that experience and how it's still a part of their lives. There's still a group growing, a Sister of the Yam group going in Tennessee. And they were having a big meeting. So it shows you the depth of how Black women were touched by the work and how they incorporated that work in their day-to-day lives as they explored life. They could come together and talk. I know here in Berea, she had a circle of women coming and sharing and talking. And that was, to a large degree, that beloved community. That community that you trust, that you can reveal things that maybe you didn't feel there was anyone you could talk about. You know, those things in the shadow that haunt our lives. You know, Tracy and I have spoken about the mental health of Black women. And one of our problems is stress. Where do you go to talk about stress with other people who know what you're talking about? You don't have to teach somebody about Black women's stress. You're going to a space where other Black women know exactly what you're talking about. But you're working together to come up with a new paradigm for each person that's in that group, and for each person that's willing to share what you learn from the group with other women, Black women. So that's why I love Sisters of the Yam. Tracy,
give us one more. Give us one more book.
And then I want to recommend Bone Black and Wounds of Passion. And Karen said one more, and I'm just going to throw in Remembered Rapture. Those are 3 books that we did together. And Bone Black, because it's about a young Black girl growing up, one who loved to read. And I think that's important. I think reading, period, is important. And people always say, you know, I don't have time this and that. Well, you could probably read while you're sitting there looking for what to watch on Netflix. I mean, it's got to be a half hour before you decide on something. So there's a half hour you could use to read. And Wounds of Passion being a woman who decided that, you know, who had to make way for her creativity. And when you make way for your creativity, what do you have to sacrifice in order to see it thrive? And then Remembered Rapture, because there's so few Black books on writing that are written by Black people. And she was one of the few and the very first who actually wrote about that area on what it means to live a life of words and to write. I went on tour with Belle on her book tour. And we had one stop in Cambridge, in Boston. And after Belle's talk, Cornel West had come. And so the three of us were chit-chatting. And then Cornel West said, well, let's go over to Skip Gates' house for dinner. And so we did that. So we went over to Henry Louis Gates' house for dinner, the three of us. And of course he was there. We had a really wonderful time. And I wanted to share that story because that's what I find is very much missing between writers, is that people are not, you know, I know not just during the pandemic, but outside the pandemic, we're not together enough, in each other's company enough.
Yes.
To share ideas. Everybody's on the, you know, super highway to success, I guess, and they're not stopping and having these conversations. And so it meant a lot to sit there at the dinner table and hear everything that that they were discussing. But the fact that, you know, Henry Louis Gates made it his home open to us at the last minute to come by for dinner. You know, it makes me think about James Baldwin and Lorraine Hansberry and how he used to go by her studio and hang out and discuss ideas and things like that. And Belle was really big on that. And I loved how you mentioned that earlier, Dr. Watkins, about how she thought it was important to bring people together and have them together.
I love it. I love that. Tracy, before we go, how do you think Bell Hooks should be remembered?
She should be read. She should be read, and people should discuss her work from here till eternity.
I love that. Dr. Watkins, your sister, let's take it into the human, to the personal. How should she be remembered?
As a loving sister, as someone who loved to talk to other people and to help. She did so many kind gestures that just were so genuine in the moment. She stayed in the moment with people and loved them and loved talking to them and helping them. She was a visionary. And I don't think she often gets credit for that, but she saw so many things that we are just beginning to see and wrap our heads around. So I agree with Tracy. She should be read, and you should push yourself to look beyond what you might think is obvious stuff and see what's underneath, because that's where the deep dive is for all of us, for our race. We've got to do the deep dive together.
And we've got to appreciate each other while we're here. Respect each other, say each other's names, you know, speak of each other's work, acknowledge each other. We have to do that too.
I love you both. Nice to meet you, Dr. Watkins. Nice to meet you.
So great to see you, Dr. Watkins.
Good to see you.
Yeah. And Tracy, we got more work to do. So I appreciate, reconnecting with you. I love you.